Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. I am here giving you some information about Baxter's relational dialectical tensions. This is a really big theory. This is one of the most important things I need to talk about today. We're also going to Dr. Allen's chapter for this week, Power Matters, from our book. And I really think this chapter is like one of the most essential chapters of the book because in communication, we say that messages have content dimensions and relational dimensions. And the content dimension of a message is the literal meaning of that message, where the relational dimension of a message is really the difference between solidarity in an interaction or a power dynamic. So, the solidarity meaning that we have the appearance of being equal, or is there some imbalance and there's power or a power struggle? Uh, and of course, the ideas of aggression or indirect aggression or passive aggression, or is it more feeling more manipulative, even if you're supposed to have elements of solidarity, is the relational dimension of power overtaking the content of the message. So power matters, and we want to kind of understand it and as how it impacts us in our societies impacting us and our relationships, our institutions, organizations, things like that, even the family. Okay, so that being said, both of these things I have quite a bit to say about, so I guess I'll just launch into, well, I'm already on power, so let's just go ahead and keep going with Brendan Allen. But of course, when we get to relational dialectical tensions, I have quite a few different things here that I want to share with you about that theory. Kind of like I did with social penetration theory, this dialectical tensions is going to really help us kind of understand that a lot of the conflicts that we're in are a tug of war between two different needs that we have, and which one is um, more significant than the other. And then the other person or people in a team have other needs, and they're also in that tug of war. It's a lot to think about. So I think uh, I'll start with Foucault and Dr. Allen, and then we'll go into Baxter. Okay, so actually, let me just adjust a few things. Let's get going. Maybe I'll have a little sip of my tea while it's still warm, because once I get talking, it's hard to remember to come back to the tea. All right. So Foucault, I put up some information on the Canvas page about Foucault. I'm definitely not an expert in Foucault, but I have studied Foucault and I talk about a lot about Foucault. But I'm not on the expert level of his theories and philosophies. I just like to say that because I'm a little humbled that I'm even trying to explain it here. Um, but in Difference Matters, Dr. Allen uses Foucault to explain power, so we've got to have something to understand. So Foucault's concept of power is really that we that the structures of our society, uh, there are a few people, maybe like that are holding power. And when they have control of power, they are the ones who are deciding what is right and what is wrong, and what is good and what is bad. And their exercise of power is really kind of a coercive or manipulative kind of way that they design a society to maintain those structures, because of course they want to maintain their power, and they don't want to give up crown or their throne, uh, or their office. They want, so they're going to, even if they climb the ladder to get there, they're going to maintain a structure to hold on to it. And then as we go down, there's these layers of people that are holding power that are also using their position to maneuver to be as close as they can to the influence of power, to influence power. So it's kind of a game. There's a little bit of a game. And Foucault is coming out of a period of time where he is really trying to uh, reveal that. His philosophy is say, hey, do you want the red pill or do you want the blue pill? Foucault says, here's the red pill. So get ready. Once you get in, it gets a little like nasty. This is where the Machiavellian theories and other kind of things start kind of popping up because of this idea of there's a strategy and a game and a form of shrewd aggression that and shrewd meaning that it's kind of this weird undertow current that is sweeping us all into the game, even if we're like, I don't want to be in the game. So the Foucault's modern view of power is really going to ask you, who are you? Which is kind of what we've been doing in building effective teams. We're really starting with this idea of identity. And when we're coming together and we want to build a team of people to either problem solve or be innovative and creative or deal with a chaos or a complex problem, though we want to kind of understand the strengths and weaknesses of the people that we're allowing into the team. But in power matters, we also want to understand how these identity labels and these undercurrents are influencing the relational dimensions of the messages and why sometimes we're like, oh my God, group work, right? Y'all meet. Oh, who's going to be the first person to talk? We're going to get more into that, but those are things that are like we're trying to build. This is the scaffolding we're building towards really understanding what happens when we're first walking into that team. So part of Foucault is talking about discipline. So the all of these things about really bring us to this idea of this word discipline. And Foucault spends a lot of time trying to define discipline and what is disciplinary power. This is that kind of uh, this idea that we need to be hard on crime or we need to make an example of. And some of our favorite TV shows, they'll always, the person gets this leadership role, or movies, someone gets into leadership and they're going to make an example of someone to show their power, right? Like I'm going to show I'm in for charge. So I'm going to make an example of the tyrant I am or the discipline. And then by doing that, that's part of establishing that idea of what that person did was bad, and I'm going to discipline them. But then the discipline, because discipline, in our modern society, we often use this word for structure and being a good worker, right? And Foucault says that is a type of punishment, that you are a good worker or that you are willing to keep a schedule and be disciplined in your habits and you work out. Wow, that person works out every day. They're disciplined. That is, Foucault is really trying to make a relationship of that to this idea of structures of power and the institutions of power, and that you are self-punishing yourself to maintain yourself in the game of whatever the society is or structure that we're talking referring to. So so discipline equals punishment, and you are in school right now, or you are at a job and you are in the grind, time to make the donuts, right? And I got to get out there and I got to do that thing. You are self-disciplining yourself. You're self-punishing yourself in order to, well, fill in the blank, to be able to get that money so that you can afford a structure for safety and for the well-being. You need a home, that self-discipline, that punishment that you do so that you can do that dream trip, or you can live a certain lifestyle, or the fitness, the well-being, the things that we do, we we participate. Foucault says we're participating in self-punishment in order because of the power structures that have been set up. Oh my gosh, I hope I'm not repeating myself, but I'm really trying to get you to kind of weave through this to see how these things are interconnected. It's a philosophy, so it has a little bit of that philosophical kind of tone to it. I bet you could think of a better word right there for that philosophical edge. So, there's also a concept. I'm not going to really go into it. It's not something that I'm putting in here, but this is the idea of governmentality. And governmentality is kind of an extension of Foucault, and that we are talking about the way that you choose to be good according to whatever the organization or society or family explicit rules that you choose. That governmentality is the way you govern your own actions to participate in what is decided to be right and wrong and good and bad by those structures of power. If you go to the store and you do not shoplift at the store, you chose not to steal, that means that governmentality says you are governing yourself to participate in the structure of that society. Okay, so all of that is to come to Foucault's idea of surveillance. And I'm going to spend a little bit time on this idea of surveillance or inspection. And the way Foucault enters into this idea of surveillance, back when he was writing, uh, is to look at the structure of the prison, the Panoptocan. Oh my God, I'm just mutilating this word, by Jeremy Bentham, and his brother had this idea of the way of a redesign of a prison or how to maintain power. And it's a theory, and it ends up becoming this idea that permeates our society. And now with technology here, it's still permeating at a completely different level. But here, Jer Jeremy Bentham's Pentateuchian prison design, which you may have heard of before, is this architectural idea of inspection. And the idea of inspection meaning that the someone is being watched, but they can't see the watcher. So the person with power can watch, but the person without power cannot see back. And that means that uh, the prison design that Foucault develops this idea of surveillance from is building off of this idea, and the architecture that is that you can just Google this and see an image of it, but there's a single watchtower in the middle of a round prison. The prison is round. It has several floors that go up, and there's bars all around, and the prisoners in are more isolated in these spaces, these cells, with a window to the outside, and then on the inside is the watchtower where you don't know if you're being watched at any time. And I don't know if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, they have this style of prison when they're in prison and they have to break out, and they invade the tower in the middle. That's very Foucault and Bentham here. That's going back to these theories. Actually, a lot of high schools are designed this way, that where uh, and it's where the open space is in the middle of the school. When schools are redesigned, designed, sometimes there's an open space in the middle. Corvallis High School does this, where the library is in the middle and all the classrooms are in these, it's a rectangle, but it's the same idea. And the balcony looks down into the library space, but everybody can see everybody at any time. Anyone could walk out and see. And this is that idea that if you could be watched at any time, then there's some type of compliance to the structure of power. Okay. And there's a lot of high schools that are designed or being redesigned with this kind of idea of watching or being watched. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. What else do I want to say? Okay, another example. I'm sure you're thinking of examples. Do you have one? I want to hear your examples, but we could think about a modern day office space that has a big open area, and the offices along the side are looking down into the cubicles. So some people have offices on the side, and some people are in the middle in the open area, and they don't really have walls. They have like these kind of dividers where when they're sitting down, they can't really see anyone else, but as soon as they stand up, they can see. But the people in the offices have a better view of everybody. And the way the cubicles are usually designed is with your back to the opening, with your computer screen being able to be seen. So whatever you're working on, if someone's walking by, they can see what's on your computer screen or see what you're working on immediately. Okay, so that would be another way of the watcher, the surveillance showing up. And even if someone isn't constantly watching you, you have the feeling you're being constantly watched. Okay, and then now with our technology, this is where we could get some really good examples going, that how are we being watched? And if we're not being watched, we should just assume we're being watched. There's cameras in stores. The camera when you're being checked out at the register, they're usually pointed straight down. And that's to watch the person checking you out and to watch the customer. Like it's a type of compliance for the power structure of the way the supermarket works. Um, and I guess, yeah, there's a lot of thoughts I have about that. And then uh, reality TV show or social media, and this idea of always taking a picture where you are and taking selfies and being comfortable with being photographed constantly, or that somehow uh, we have these devices in our home now. Maybe we feel safer with a camera at our door or even a camera inside the house. And especially if the news amplifies, oh wow, because someone had a camera in their house, uh now then when they was uh home invasion or a burglar, when they weren't there now, and we could catch that person, that somehow now we're even justifying allowing surveillance of ourselves even in our own home. I mean, I think Foucault's mind would have just been like blown at this point to see from this idea. And it's not new. It also exists in neighborhoods, the neighborhood watch idea, or even HMOs. Uh, or yeah, the neighborhood kind of, there's a board and they're keeping an eye on things, and there's this idea that if you live in this neighborhood you have to comply, and I'm going to tell you what kind of tree you can plant in your backyard, and how, and whatever else is are the rules of the neighborhood. This is really common now because new builds have to, a lot of new build neighborhoods are required to have these uh, things, because the city doesn't want to be the one to for compliance of, because it's too much for government to watch, so they're asking neighbors to watch each other. And that's kind of this other layer of surveillance. And often the way neighborhoods are designed is so that you can see into each other's backyards, and you can see into, there's your window and a neighbor's window are right there, like the Alfred Hitchcock Rear Window movie. I'm going to be able to spot a crime by just spying on my neighbor, or in the sitcom series Bewitched, there was the neighbor that was always checking in, which Bewitched is often an allegory for gay culture, is often thought about gay culture or feminism and complying with the power of how, of heteronormative, and the housewife with who shouldn't have power, and the fact that the neighbor is constantly interrupting and peeking through the windows. The idea of surveillance and being under surveillance to comply with what, who you're supposed to be, who society who says you are, and if you have a job, uh, that is part of it. Uh, One more thing is this idea of bossware. I don't know if you've heard of bossware or have bossware, but if you work from home and you had to check out a computer from your job, this isn't of something that you usually, they have access to whatever happens on that computer. They can see what websites you went to, how long did you spend on each time. Actually, Canvas has a type of boss where I can go in and look at the algorithms of how you used my Canvas page. I can see your participation, what pages you've looked at, how long you looked at a page. I can see all that on Canvas as well. That's another idea because of the structure of the classroom to for surveillance. And they can see where your mouse travels and whether your mouse is on or been still for too long. What's another thing? Oh, or another way, if you say, well, I don't check out a computer, I use my own computer. Often you're supposed to log into the server of the business, and then you enter into the website from the server of the organization, and then that has other types of surveillance to see, when did you log into the server, when did you log out, what was your activity in the server, and it's compiling all this data and information. And all of this is to say that we are under surveillance. You live in a surveillance culture. It's not new. It's been around for a long time. And as and this is why this chapter is so important, because she really gets into the structure of group work in organizations, is another layer of power and surveillance. Of you have a morning huddle and let's check in with your team, and there's all of these things. So, um, I'm not trying to like freak you out. I get a little freaked out by it sometimes. It's the world we live in. And these are things that we need to understand so we can navigate them and be clear uh, about our own identity. So, because my way of coming into a team building class is to understand identity, and a lot of that has also been used as, okay, we're going to get our team together and let's make a group resume and let's figure out what our strengths are. I'm really good at doing Zoom and making a presentation on Zoom, so I'll do that. Oh, I'm really good at, doing the PowerPoint. I'll make a PowerPoint, whatever it is, a presentation slides that's often the way identity has been kind of looked at for this idea of collaborating in teams. But I also want us to see these other undercurrents that are going on, which when we talk about identity, identity is also our power label that we've been given by our jobs or our family. um, from Father Knows Best, a sitcom that was trying to define the structure of the father as the power to other structures, other ways that families have been redefined through time, and our TV shows kind of do that to our workplaces. So in on our jobs, we're often given a label, right? I am an instructor. Actually, I'm a non-tenure track instructor at my university. I'm not an associate professor or a tenured track professor, right? We have all these labels. There's a dean, there's a chair, there's the provost, and it goes on and on. You get a label, and that tells you where you are in the power structure. Uh, and and so if we say we're in a group and we have a group, that's going to have a lot more hierarchy labels to it. Um, and we want to think about who is deciding our label, and is that our identity? Sometimes we feel mismatched with the label we've been given to who we know we are. A lot of people use the term imposter syndrome because they feel mismatched with their label. Uh, I want you to think about that in a lot of different ways. Just this is a little bit of because we're going to move into dialectical tensions in a second. But imposter syndrome just means, well, it doesn't just mean, it's a complicated theory, and it's kind of been co-opted into social media. And it's kind of, when it happens, gets this kind of fluid new meaning. But it's really this idea that psychologically, we had an idea of who we are, and we had to step into a new role. And whenever we're in something new, our brain is going to tether us to what we know. This is what I know. And I'm doing something I don't know. That's like, I feel confused, usually means I can't find a tethered memory to define what's happening. And I have to now make a new memory. And that's painful. Yuck. Right? You have to get into the muck of that newness and the learning mind. And when we are in um, situations that are very predictable and we feel comfortable, uh, we don't feel we like we're in best practices, we're in flow. And when we step into new things. So imposter syndrome is really, I don't have an anchor for this new role, and I have to go back to beginner mind to learn my new role. And that makes me feel like, especially if it's a role with any power in it, or anything, while I'm a beginner here. That's why I love David Marquette. And I posted his video for this week, um, Captain David Marquette and his experience being on the USS Santa Fe, the submarine, where he's talking about he is here and he never says, I'm an imposter. He says, I just know what kind of leader I am, and I'm going to create a followership where everyone can be a leader. And redefining imposter syndrome to be that I don't have to be the expert in everything. That's why I hired you. That's why I hired you. That's why I hired you. And you don't, and um, and you a beginner's mind is actually a gift to be able to lead in a way that that empowers the people you're with. And I want you to think of it that way instead of leaning into this victim of I'm an imposter kind of place. And I want you to feel a little more empowered yourself. Okay. Is there anything else about Foucault before we move on? There's one more thing. I'm looking at the Canvas page in integrating themes in leadership development to look at how it connects to Dr. Um, Dr. Allen's work with Difference Matters. I put up an example about Brave, which I think is really the movie from the movie Brave. Um, and one thing with the movie Brave that I think is actually that Pixar film, which is really important, is we have all these different ideas of power. You can read what I wrote about it, but we have Merida, who is the new generation coming in, and she has a completely different idea about how she wants to define who she is. And we have Queen Eleanor, who is constantly trying to be put her daughter under surveillance until she complies with the power structure. And then, um, and Queen Eleanor did it. We can see that Queen Eleanor is raising Merida the way she was raised to comply, and Queen Eleanor did comply and has been a very successful queen and has a loving family, but she cannot get this next generation, her next daughter, to follow in her footsteps. And there's all that uh, friction happening. And then there's Mordu. Mordu is really really the icing on the cake to understand corruption and this grab for power and this kind of Machiavellian dark triad. Because once he was a human prince, but then he turns into this monster. And how does power change us into a monster and the perils of power? There's kind of this downfall that happens with Mordu. Uh, and Queen Eleanor is on her way to being Mordu, basically, because of her rigidity to structure and compliance, and because of this over surveillance of her daughter, Merida. So I think it's a really interesting story to come at. I just put a couple of videos up. If you haven't seen the movie, you could just kind of get an idea from the trailer. It's not definitely not required to watch those videos or watch the movie, but I just did it for you to kind of be able to see the way that type of storytelling translates to what we were talking about with power. Okay, next, what you've all been waiting for. Coming from you, Baxter's relational dialectical tensions. Sorry, I'm a little punchy. Let me have some more of my tea. Okay, I have to kind of get my mind into this new theory, put this other one away. So I love this. This might be one of my favorites. And I know I teach the TKI model, the Thomas Kilmann instrument model in my other class, which is another one of my faves. But this one really changed my life. Uh, like high context, low context, for those of you who have heard me talk about that. This one, when I learned this and I was going into a blended family and a second marriage, I leaned into this theory hard. I'm not going to say I was perfect, but it really helped me understand com a different way to under the conflicts that were happening as I was bringing a blended family together. And I use this as a theater director as well to manage the friction of a lot of creative individuals to be in one show and get to that opening night performance. So Baxter's relational dialectical tensions uh, includes. So I'm just going to talk about all the elements of theory, and then then as we get into all of the different pieces of it, I will talk about how we want to think about it. So this is a theory to understand how conflict shows up. So we have intrapersonal conflict, and then we have interpersonal conflicts. That means that you have identity happening. Let me see if I can reveal this in a way so we can just talk about one thing at a time. Your, oops, we're not ready for that model yet. So funny. I could just do a PowerPoint, but God, I can't stand them. Okay. So there's you. This is where your intrapersonal conflict happens. And in the model, they call it an internal manifestation. So the internal manifestation of you having a conflict, uh, this is what should I or shouldn't I? Or I'm having a hard time making a decision, or I know what I want, and I know what I need, and I know the answer, and I don't know why we're having so much trouble with this. This is the answer, right? Or I could go either way. Um, so those inner dialogues that we're having, that intrapersonal conflict is in the relational dialectical tensions is an internal manifestation. And these little groups on the outside are all our interpersonal relationships that we're having, even in our internal dialogue, whether it's with a romantic relationship or a coworker or boss, whether it's our team that or a family or our parents or siblings, right? Like whatever we are kind of in relationship with, internal manifestation is the intrapersonal conflict. Next is the we. We. The we is when we are a unit. So this is your identity as a unit, uh, as a married couple, um, as a family, as a group or a team. And that team can be so we have a lot of athletes here, your soccer team, your basketball team, football team. That would be a we identity, that group. And when we are identifying this group, we really want to think it as people we have interpersonal contact with. That's a really important part of it. I put some groups, teams, these are these things, best friends, right? Like BFFs, best friends forever. As soon as you put that label on it, you want to think of how do we put labels on things? We are joining. And now, if you have an immediate family that is pretty tight, and then one person in the family decides to marry another family, and they have a really tight family, and a marriage is really trying to create, are they the marriage going to create a brand new family and it feels like, oh my God, we've lost something in our unit? Or is this whole family now have to come together, right? That's why weddings and new relationships in a family sometimes show up with a lot of friction or conflict. We're going to get into that when we get into this. Um, I do want the theory doesn't cover this, but I want to talk about another level of identity, and that's your us identity, which I call your tribe identity. So when you have a tribal identity, this is how you know yourself, but you're connecting yourself or belonging yourself to a group where you don't know everyone in the group. You've never met everyone in the group. You may never meet everyone in the group, right? Like if I say I'm traveling and I say, "Hey, I'm an Oregonian," or they say, "Where are you from?" "I'm from Oregon. I'm an Oregonian." And they go, "Oh, I know someone from Oregon." And they mentions a city and someone, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's a cool city." But like I had this identity that I'm so proud of. I'm an Oregonian, but I don't know everybody in my tribe, right? And this is really important because even if I don't know everyone in my tribe, I might be willing to protect people in my tribe, or I might feel outraged about people experiencing harm in my tribe if I feel connected to that identity. So this is where is our age group and these kind of generations. We have baby boomers and sandwich sandwich generation or Zers or Mills, like we have all these little labels. That's age. We will get to age in this book that we're reading by Dr. Allen. That's another way of a tribal identity to show up. Nationality, of course, or region, Pacific Northwest, state, um, but there's or Texas or New Yorkers, but then you get neighborhoods, right, that can have a tribal feeling to it. American and different countries, nationality can be a tribe. Uh, the waving the flag, one nation under God. I pledge allegiance to oh, say, can you see, right? Like you learn all these things, and all these threads that pull you into that tribe, those traditions. We're coming up on holidays like July 4th or Thanksgiving that are really unique to your nationality. You can feel how those things pull us together in this kind of tribal identity. Uh, and then religion. Religion might be another way that you identify your us identity. Ethnicity. Ethnicity is really important, especially when we talk about things like race. Uh, Race meaning that we see uh, marginalization or someone being experiencing harm because of their race and or being called out because of their race. Oh. And that means that, sorry, my phone went off for a second. And then we experience the harm, right? Like that's really the power of the us identity, how someone can experience something because of the something we feel connected to. And if it can, and then like with George Floyd, which the tragedy and murder of George Floyd, that we saw that something went beyond the us identity went beyond just a race, and it became this kind of unification and a way and to bring people together over Black Lives Matter issue, to extend an issue that's been happening for hundreds of years. Okay. Uh, Ability, any type of identity that we hold with that about around disability, uh, fans. I like this one. Fans, right? Fans are like the Swifties or the Beehive. I lean a little more Beehive, but I appreciate the us identities of being a fan. And we see things like the BET Awards or the CMA Awards along music. Music is a really great way to look at us identities as well. And of course, political identities as are a really important piece of that too. Okay, so this is to say that in we're going to go over I and we. Us does isn't really cool included in re, Baxter's relational dialectical tensions, but I really want you to understand the difference between a we identity and an us identity. Okay, so how this model looks is uh, like this. It looks like an Excel spreadsheet. We have two Excel spreadsheets this term because I'm going to do social exchange theory as well. You have an internal manifestation and an external manifestation. So the internal manifestation, right? We talked about that uh, here and here. The external manifestation, it's going to go across this way. That looks like this. That's where your we identity experiences conflict with others that you like if you are a romantic couple and you have to deal with um, parents, uh, best friends, siblings, a colleague, a boss, right? External manifestations would be how your we identity is dealing with the outside. So you have these two different ways, and we're going to go over the way conflict shows up. And there's three different categories. I'm not going to really, we already have so much vocabulary. I'm not going to get into that level of it, but those have their own. I could go on about those as well, but we're just going to call them one, two, and three. And there's themes that connect the internal and the external here. So we're going to start here with internal manifestations, and then we will jump. Okay, so internal manifestation. The first one is autonomy versus connection. Autonomy versus connection is this desire for independence versus the desireness for closeness. And when we think about what is a dialectical tension is like a tug of war. Okay. The tug of war is that I want this, I want A, and I want B. But you can't have A and B at the same time, right? Like I want to get tacos for dinner, but I also want some good ramen for dinner. Well, you can only have one dinner. Which one are you going to have? Tacos or ramen? Or I want to go on my dream trip to visit Santa at the North Pole, or my dream trip is actually to go to the Antarctic and visit penguins. Am I going to go visit Santa or the penguins? Which one is it? You can't do both at the same time. Is absolutely physically impossible, right? So that's what a dialectical tension is. We have two needs. We want them both, but you can only have one at a time. And we are in a constant internal struggle to fulfill these two needs at the same time, but we can't. Ooh, it causes so much problems. I know I always seem a little happy when I talk about conflict. I like talking about conflict because it's it's frustrating and we often feel lost and there's a lot of pressures on navigating the world and these things really help me. So I get excited when I can share them. Okay. So let's talk about autonomy. Autonomy is the need for independence, to be able to have privacy, to be able to, well, privacy is a little bit different, but to be on my own, to feel like I can do it. I'm gonna do it, right? I can make my way in the world. And uh, now, connection is that need for belonging, which we know from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It is the third need in the pyramid structure. You need your physiological needs to be alive. You need to feel safe and have structure and sleep. And then you need to belong. Belonging is huge. And the need for connection and to be seen, the need to be unique, and that you have something that to be seen for your uniqueness and that you matter and you have a purpose and someone wants to hang out with you. Someone wants you on their job. Someone wants to, someone wants to hire you. Someone wants to call you. Right? Like that's so important and it's huge, right? Now, if this is a tug of war that I need my independence, I need to not be tied down, and then we have this other need, this gets all tangled up in this tug of war, and we're constantly in an internal debate. Now, depending on our backgrounds, especially our really youthful childhood, we might lean one way or another. And that's where attachment styles, which I am not going to get into attachment styles in this video, it is a whole other thing. But if you've heard about attachment styles, uh, like anxious attachment and things like that, we might lean way more into this need for belonging or connection than we do for independence. But often we're relationshiping uh, with someone who is leaning towards autonomy. And then we're in a debate because we want to be with that person, but they are leaning to this person is leaning towards I I I need alone time. I need to go do my own thing. Sometimes this happens as shows up in a conflict in a relationship where uh someone is like always like, when are you going to be home? Where are you going? When are you going to be, but who are you going to go be with? And why can't I go with you? I thought you liked my that's why we're in a relationship because I thought you liked my company. Why are you doing this without me? There's someone like this. And then there's someone who's like, hey, I can be with you, but I want to go do this on my own. And it's not your thing anyway. You don't like X, Y, Z, right? You don't like that anyway. You don't like to go to museums. You don't like to go to football games. You don't even like my friends. Uh, why don't I just go do this and then I'll be home when it's over? And actually, Leonard and Penny have this issue when she's hanging out with her friends watching football and Leonard doesn't know anything about football or watches football and he's worried, why don't you invite me to watch football with your friends? And she's like, do you even I didn't even think you liked football. And he's like, oh, well, you don't want your friends to meet me, right? Like Leonard definitely has a very much more anxious attachment style, and the Big Bang Theory gets into his mother's parenting style to kind of unravel that. But that is that autonomy connection conflict showing up. Actually, Ross and Rachel have that problem too. Rachel gets that new job and she wants her independence, right? That's the whole premise of the show, that she ran out on the wedding. She cut up the credit cards. She is really trying to get her independence. And Ross is much more leans towards connection and wants everything to be in that unit. And that is one of the ways that conflict is showing up. Now, when we get into a team, you have all these different people on your team, and each one has this internal manifestation of this conflict. And then you're the leader in charge of your group, and You have your own expectations of autonomy versus connection. And you might find some people really resentful of why are we always having to have this meeting and can't you trust me to just go work out? Why do I have to be under surveillance to and your power structure to work out? And other people love the connection and really want that. And I would love that our whole team works out at the same time. I mean, I don't know how it's showing up. That's just an example. I bet you that's not my world. It's just things I've heard from my students over the years. So I can't wait to hear what you come up with, especially those in athletics, how you're here seeing that come up. Um, so that is the autonomy connection one, and a it is a foundational human. Of all of the ones I'm going to talk about, it is the most foundational human intrapersonal friction we are experiencing is how to balance both autonomy and connection in our relationships, in our workplaces. If you are working for a boss that is heavy into the connection piece and you know you work better when you work autonomously, ah, that is really, really difficult because you're like, I could get so much more done if I didn't have to be under the umbrella of all constant surveillance and you constantly checking in and you constantly, right, blah, 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 right? So if we're really looking at building effective teams in an organizational leadership program, we really need to understand if we're going for innovation, creativity, and productivity, understanding what is needed on an intrapersonal conflict level for ourselves. We're going to show up better for our group and start creating balance. Okay, we just did this box right here, autonomy versus connection. Uh, let's, I'm trying to think. We're going to keep going with these. The second one, when we get to, I guess I should say, when we get to external, this will be same version of this, but it'll be for the we identity, and I'll go through all those. But I think we're just going to go all the way across here. So the next one is openness, closedness. Another intrapersonal. And this is great because we just did social penetration theory, which is how much it's our onions. Actually, I still have my onions. They're a little buried here. Remember, we did the onions here. That this is self-disclosure. How openness is this idea of what I want to share with you. What am I thinking? What are my feelings? Should I give you an example? What about my experiences? Right? Openness. How much self-disclosure should I be giving to the intrapersonal relationship? And closeness in the dialectical tensions, the very opposite of that is the need for privacy. And how much should I keep certain feelings or thoughts or experiences to myself? And we are constantly trying to decide. Some people are higher self monitors and the high self monitors are like in a really hyper awareness of how much I should reveal and how much I shouldn't reveal. Where lower self monitors are sometimes unaware of oversharing or jumping to those deeper layers of the onion without any reciprocity or getting perception checking or things like that. They're not in a dialogue, often low self monitors. And they often use the excuse, well, I'm just being honest. I'm just being myself. You can't take me. Boom, right? Like they often use this idea of a core value to kind of excuse monologuing or oversharing or over talking. That's not for every single person. There's a lot of things at play here. And I don't even bring up neurodiverse or different type of ability situations, which if you have any experience with that in your family or in your work, you know that is impacting all of these as well. I don't bring it up because not because I don't think it's important. I don't bring it up because I want you to get the theory. And then when we open up into discussion and you react to this, that's where we want to start finding the nuance. I'm just giving you the box, which is the theory. Once we get done with the box, we're going to realize real life is not a box, right? There's a lot of uncertainty in life and a lot of different complexities that make up our experiences. Okay. So, what should this openness and closedness is just that thing we're constantly trying to decide about what to self-disclose and what not self. Because I spent so much time in the last video on self-disclosure, I feel like we kind of check this one a little faster. The next one is this idea of predictability versus novelty. Predictability, this is remember, we're still in the internal manifestation of this. This is our own need for things to be certain, and our this idea of a schedule, and I need to know how things are going to happen. If you've never been in my class and you opened Canvas for the first time, uh, you probably were experiencing a lot of novelty. My class is designed a little bit different than uh, meant actually be we don't have a lot of uniform ways Canvas shows up unless your Oregon State University has eCampus, and eCampus has been there for quite a while. Long before the pandemic, they are very successful and they created a lot of pedagogical on-course design that creates a structure that is permeating the university, and a lot of things are starting to find predictability there. Where Canvas is relatively new at Western Oregon University. And when you open it up and we don't have an official e-campus department, we have a lot of things that are different. But if you've taken my class before, hello, those of you who've taken my class before, it's so good to see you again. You opened my class and you went, whew, okay. This is Sarah Sheldrick's class. This is the way it looks. Ta-da. And you maybe felt this kind of sigh of relief, or you went, oh, here we are again. Well, I know what to expect. It is what it is, right? Uh, and we all react differently. Just like with autonomy and connection, some of us will lean a little bit more heavily into needing predictability or certainty. And the need for certainty is it's this high need for closure. It's this high need that I need to know. I need to know exactly what's going to happen, right? When we're leaning heavy into predictability, when we're in, um, some people have lean more towards uh, a high tolerance for things to be uncertain and spontaneity and novelty. Uh, and in our relationships, how this shows up, we often have a conflict that we're in ourselves of how we are demanding from our other people we're interacting uh, some certainty. And if we need real predictability, we're going to be much more like, I need to know we're going to go travel. I need to know the plan. I want to go on a tour. I want to be on a tour bus. I want to know every stop and I want to know what time we have to be on back on the bus, right? But let's say you're traveling with someone who, oh man, that's not how to experience it. I have a high tolerance for uncertainty and we need to just have this experience. And they get off, maybe they know that's important for you and they accommodate your need for the schedule, but then they get off a bus and they just feel themselves like, oh no, I need more time in this space. Like, come on, let's miss the bus, right? And you're like, ah. I, I, and some of us, depending on the situation, we might be more willing to be here than there. We don't want to say like autonomy and connection. Maybe in my romantic relationship, I need a lot more connection. Uh, or I need more autonomy. I need to be able to tell my friends at work I'm going to go out with them after work. And I really don't want to have to even call and say I'm going to be home at a certain time. You should trust me, right? Like these things are happening. Same with predictability and novelty. Like, uh, you might, when you're traveling, you might need more predictability because everything is novel. There's already enough novelty. I need this. Where, some, where at work, God, I want creativity. I want innovation. I can't just go to the same dreary job every single day. Life is already predictable enough for me, right? We might be a little bit picky about where and when these are showing up contextually for us in our lives. Predictability, novelty. So this one really impacted me in when I was in my relationship, because relationships do need predictability, especially romantic relationships. So when I was dating my now husband, uh, and I'm in my second marriage, which I think I've self-disclosed to y'all that at some point, but uh, we both love baseball. We just love baseball. It is deep in the heart of our childhood. I think we both feel like almost a spiritual feeling when we're at baseball games together, these kind of things. So then when we were dating, that was part of the novelty of finding similarity, attraction with it, talking about baseball. Of course, my husband knows all the names and stats. I just love the I love the leisure feeling of sitting back for a game and in just enjoying being outside. And that's my favorite part of it. So we are bringing some novelty to our experience. And my husband loves all the stats and scores and he knows all the names. And we'd sit there and he's like, oh, we just had this pitch. Get ready. I bet it's going to be this pitch. And he'd be right. And I'd be like, oh, props. It was the novelty of the relationship at the beginning is part of the spark of a beginning of a relationship. And when we're in groups, we also experience a little bit of spark as we get to know each other because we do need novelty. If you don't have novelty, you end up in Groundhog Day world. That movie from the 90s, and and we get stuck. Too much predictability gets people like cement gets stuck. So that's why new relationships have like this kind of tantalizing piece to it. But then we get engaged and we're moving in together and we're creating a blended family. And yes, I really felt like, thank goodness we have baseball because that be at that point of the relationship, we needed something predictable that grounded us as a couple and made us that we identity. But I was like, inside, I was like, we still need something. I need something novel. I want this relationship to last a long time. What's going to be the next thing? where's the spot? Are we going to be able to keep that spontaneity and spark alive? So I said, hmm, I also really enjoy basketball, even though my dad loves basketball. My sister goes to basketball games, and I'm a little on the outside when my dad and my sister are doing basketball. I'm just kind of a tag along. But I was like, I'm teaching at Oregon State University, and I have women basketball players in my class, and let's go to some women basketball games. Let's see what it's like. And it was really novel and new, uh, and but we just did it. We just started going to the women basketball games. This is way, way back. I think about 11 years or 12. So it was women's basketball at OSU has gotten ramped up and is really successful and popular. We were there when most of the Gill Coliseum in Corvallis was empty, and we could just like sit wherever we want. We had like 3 rows to ourselves. And we kind of watched it grow, and all of a sudden we had to get season tickets, and we were crammed in, and but it was kind of exciting. We created this kind of novelty, then sunk into something that I felt more comfortable with. Um, I had some predictability and this feeling of connection, right? Uh, and then I was like, uh-oh, we're really leaning into predictable. We have had season tickets for years now. I'm not working at OSU. I don't know all the before I knew almost all the basketball players. So when I went down to the court, it was fun to get pictures with my students and stuff. Uh, and I'm like, uh-oh, because I lean a little more into novelty. I for romantic for especially for a romantic relationship, I want something novel and new, and uh maybe soccer's next. I'm looking at my woo students. I have so many fun woo students, and maybe I need to be showing up there. But unfortunately, novelty has shown up in a different way in my relationship as we have taken on the caregiving roles for our parents, and that has definitely been novel and new. And I don't know really what's going on, and it's hard to leave in the afternoons and evenings because we are in a multi-generational household in a caregiving role now. Um, so, okay, that is the internal manifestations here. The external ones, I won't need to, I want to explain this one uh, because I really want us to get into what's happening in group dynamics. But this works in romantic relationships, as I said before, or in a family and a blended family. It gets very complicated. Uh, and so um, the first one is inclusion seclusion. Inclusion seclusion, it's still in the column 1. So it's mirroring what's happening with autonomy connection, but now it's for that we identity. So who are we going to include in our we identity, and who is excluded? This is like when you're planning the wedding, who's a couple is planning a wedding. You have one person's family, you might have the other person's family. Boy, if it's polyamorous, you might have even a third unit coming in. And then what about who's going to be the best person standing by our side? Is it, are we, eh, Friends loves to play around with that when Phoebe gets married and who's going to walk Phoebe down the aisle. That we have this kind of who's going to be in, included, who's in the inclusion. Okay, now the couple's married, and we have a holiday coming up, and who are we going to spend for the holidays? Well, I don't really want to go to your family's holiday because I like my family's holiday traditions? Or should we, it's our first holiday, maybe we should start creating our own tradition and exclude everyone. Or maybe we want a Friendsgiving, not a family Thanksgiving. And we are going to just invite our friends to our new um, uh, holiday now as we are setting up our new life together. Uh, so inclusion, seclusion, and now in the workplace, when you have a group set, maybe you're trying to create a group. Uh, no, that would be no, I want to say the group is already formed. You have a group. Now, who is who are we reporting out to? Maybe there's a hierarchy of surveillance that a person in your group here, and then we need to add another person here. Someone in your group is actually connected to this person here, and that is uh, changes like the relationship a little in that, and here's where we come back to power. If this person is a supervisor and has power, and this person is in another group connected to them, and they have more power over this group, that changes the external inclusion and how the dynamics of that group are happening. They're influencing it. And that person's like, well, I'm connected to this other group and I know what they're doing and I have information. Well, that's going to get to a different one. I'm overlapping. I don't want to jump the jump. Revelation, concealment. It's really like, oh, I know that person would love to be in on our team. They just want to be a part of the meeting. They're just going to zoom in. They're not going to participate. They just want to listen in because it is relevant to their part of their job. And the group has to decide, are we going to include them or are we going to exclude them? That's how okay. I got back on track. Uh, these sometimes have some Venn diagram kind of shading pieces to it. It gets complex. Revelation concealment is just like openness, closedness. This is the one I almost started jumping into. This is what we are going to share about our relationship and what is private to our relationship. So maybe you're in a romantic relationship and all of a sudden one of these people's talking to their best friend about it or they're talking to their family about it and they're like, you know, um, how much of our relationship is being shared with others and what is just for us, what is private. And some people will use that almost in a dark triad kind of a um, borderline, a kind of emotional abuse to that they want to isolate the couple, their relationship. They want to isolate that person, and they will demand concealment of what's happening in the relationship in order to protect abuse that's happening. Um, and they're saying, well, you're being disloyal to the couple. So this can have a really dark side to it if someone is leaning really heavy into concealment and seclusion and isolationing. All of these kind of have some darkness when you're in a we place. So you want to have some be a kind of have a little antenna up about that. Again, not a main area that I have expertise in, but this theory helps us kind of understand what's happening in those dark triads situations. Okay. Um, so But I do like in sorry to use Friends again, my mother-in-law is watching it, so I keep like walking through the room and remembering these episodes, so it's kind of on my mind right now. Uh, but Ross and Rachel asked Ross like, "Hey, do you have any like fantasies and things like that?" And he's like, "I like the Princess Leia outfit from Return of the Jedi, or is it? Oh no, is it Empire Strikes Back? Oh my gosh, it's early in the morning. I need to switch from tea to coffee. Um, okay, you guys know. Someone out there is like yelling it at the screen. I wish I could hear you. But you know, the classic be gold bikini Princess Leia outfit. And oh yeah, it's definitely Return of the Jedi. I heard you. I got the message. There was just a little satellite delay. So Ross reveals that, and she doesn't really know what that is. So she has to go to her friends and ask, and it's of course spreads through the friend group. Big Bang Theory does that too, where Sheldon and Amy and Dr. Farrah Fowler, Amy Farrah Fowler, decide to do an experiment with their friends to see how will information travel, and they plant these tantalizing secrets and a really boring secret to see which one would travel faster through this kind of revelation concealment of their we identity. And they're really experimenting with how much privacy they have and things like that. So it's sharing aspects of the relationship with others and in group settings. Here's where you come in. Uh, Now, if you are part of a procedure or process and your group is only dealing with one part of processes of your company, then what's happening in the group, if you're experimenting and innovating, you like, can we not share every single failure we've had? We want to just say we're trying A, B, and C, but let's not get into the weeds of what's happening in here. But when we finally get somewhere where we're past the experiment and into actually something that might work, we definitely want to move into revealing that. So you might be setting up group norms about revelation and concealment. Um, so what are your group norms about what stays in the group? What are we revealing out, especially this comes up in my organizational communication class that some of you have been in, that you might have someone who is in several other committees. For example, I teach in organizational leadership, but my full-time position is actually in the communication department, so I actually have two groups. And now that organizational leadership is under the umbrella of behavioral sciences, I am getting a lot more revelation about the way behavioral sciences runs compared to the communication department. And I've got some tea. Should I be spilling tea to the communication department? Anyone out there want to weigh in on that? And then, or how much am I obligated? Is it ethical to, or unethical, or surveillance? Or have I become a surveillance tool for the power dynamics that are the politics of the university that I'm not even aware of at my non-tenure track level? Did it get complicated fast? Okay, that's just my own example, but something to think about. Now, this also happens with families. What stays in the family, what doesn't stay in the family. If you had a family unit, and I'm just going to put a little kid here because I think it's we'll put a little person in a family unit, and there is a blended family coming together. Uh, this, there's a break. Let's say there's a divorce, and the child was part of this, and what now the child has two different external manifestations of what they're allowed to reveal and conceal, and the dynamics become very complicated for children in their we identity. This is a huge emotional burden that some of you may have even experienced of what to reveal and conceal, what inclusion and seclusion. And this child is trying to navigate these very different groups. And then if we have a blended family comes together and they have now a new unit that they're a part of, and but for some reason, the parent and the child still have their own rules of revelation concealment for that we identity. But then there's the we identity of the new family. Oh, there is a reason why this becomes extremely complicated. And polyamorous relationships, uh, which I'm also not an expert in, but also have to establish really intense norms and these ideas of checking in and what and decisions about what's revealing and concealment in it. Boy, did it get complicated fast. Okay. The last one, oh boy. The last one is conventionality and uniqueness here in the external manifestation. This one is how we are adhering to social norms and expectations of the way the relationship shows up to others. And or how we think we should put up our public self to others. And conventionality says there are traditions, and we need to be conventional. Tradition, what are the traditions and expectations? And are we adhering to them? Uniqueness is that every group is unique. Every group is, this is along the predictability novelty. So here we really want to say that part of our need of novelty, our uniqueness as a we, is to say that we are not the same as others. And there's no way you could be. There is no way that your group is the same as another group. And as soon as someone new comes into the group and you have to reform your norms, you change your group again, right? Someone new comes in, it is unique. You have that novelty spark because uniqueness is part of how we feel seen. But there, we will be leaning. Which one are we going to lean towards? I need the expectation. Since I've been talking about romantic relationships, the wedding is a great way. Like, we're going to have a wedding. What are the conventional things of the way, the expectation of a wedding versus the expectation of being unique? um, what's going to make our wedding different than any other. I'm going to make my Pinterest page, and I'm going to do this thing. I went to this wedding once that did this thing I'd never seen done before. Oh, I want to do something unique at my wedding. But then you have all these external manifestations, right? Of expectations from society. I still want to look like I'm getting married. My family has expectations too. That could be like the color of a dress, right? A white dress. Like, you might have real pressures from your family that you have a white dress because when you get married, you have a white dress, and you're like, I'm not, I'm not that. I'm me. And I want something unique. And I want a rainbow colored dress, or I want a red dress, whatever, That's just one example. It could be with the cake. It could be with the location. It could be with I don't want some big splashy wedding. I don't want a traditional wedding in a religious structure. I want to be, we met when we were on a hike with a group, and I want to go back to that location, and I want to, a part of our wedding will be to go on the hike again. Uh, that's what makes us unique. That what makes us different. I want that. Okay. I think you're getting the idea. Now, how does that show up in a group, in a workplace? The expectation or so in a workplace, there's often a lot of pressure that we show up in a way that is predictable and societal's expectations demand that things show up in a certain way. And then, but then, God, if you had every class be exactly the same way, oh, or your team can't be innovative, it can't be creative if it's the same as every other team. What makes you different? One time, I watch a lot of team meetings because of the way I design my class. And there was one team, I set things up in a very certain way. And if you've been in a lot of my classes, you had to use that structure a lot. And then I had one group start kind of changing it up a little. And they were people that had been in my class. I don't know if everyone but there was someone on the team who had been in my classes a lot. And that person was in charge of the icebreaker question. And they all of a sudden turned the icebreaker question into an activity. And I was like, whoa, what's happening here? I was like, oh, wow, this is really unique. It's kind of exciting. And it created some spark as I was watching it. I got that spark. It's something to think about. It's also why the icebreaker question feels like, oh, we gotta do an icebreaker question. Because it's become conventional, where at some point it wasn't conventional. It was like, oh, wow, we're going to answer this thing, right? Um, so that's it. That's the theory. It is this relational dialectical tensions are integrated hugely into our identities. And I love the way it lines up with power and Foucault's theories and this idea of surveillance. In this, I also put in Ed Weber's a piece on collaboration. I don't have time to go over that handout in this video, so I might make a separate video for that, or maybe we will use it in class. But Dr. Edward P. Weber from Oregon State University, who's a is really important for understanding collaboration. And this comes from one of his research projects. If you wanted the whole paper, it's really interesting of what he was able to, you could probably find it. I put it in there. It's from the Building Capacity for Collaborative Water Governance in Auckland. And really trying to identify, the structure that is about what is happening for true collaboration. And these things all have a certain amount of things that need to be understood about it and expand. But that's a start, a list. That handout is a list. That's what I got today. Thanks for staying till the end. I'm going to go get coffee. That's next. Bye.